Hello everyone again. So we're doing another video on an ATEMU installation. In this case it's for a JZX100 ECU. Haven't got a physical ECU yet, but these are the same plugs as a JZX100, so they'll do for this demonstration. So just to recap, obviously you've got your total wires for your ATEMU, which is 12 altogether, and obviously we can refer to here, so we've got red, black, yellow, yellow, green, which obviously follows this down here, so you'll be able to tell which one is which on there. Again, we've got the generic instructions, just to give you an idea. So again, these are not vehicle specific. It's to try and cover every vehicle. So obviously there's going to be wires on here, specifically the top, that certain vehicles are not going to have. Okay, so getting on to the specifics for the JZX100. So with our instructions, obviously we include the pinout so you can see what's what and where everything is. Okay, so as per the original instructions, obviously you're going to cut out as much of the gearbox wires as you possibly can. So starting in your 34 pin plug, which is this one over here, obviously we're looking at everything I've crossed off in red is sort of gearbox related. All right, so the ones I've crossed out, obviously you're just going to cut off, and they're not sort of, you know, related to actually what you're going to connect to the ATEMU device. So for instance, obviously there's STP, etc., etc. Okay, so the ones I've highlighted are the ones that you're going to be looking at. So you've got E1 over here, which obviously we've got there. So you connect, so you basically splice that in. So it is obviously listed down here. So E1 you're splicing in, plus B you're splicing in, which is the red one, and NE plus, which is your crank sensor signal, that you are splicing in. All right. So obviously we've marked them off, we've marked off everything here. So you'll be able to find everything that you need to find. So for instance, there's your B, there's your E1, and obviously coming down to your solenoids, you've got S1 and S2. You've got NE plus at the top there, you've got SP2 positive and NCO positive and oil, okay? So on the JZX100, there's gonna be quite a few wires that you're not gonna use. So for instance, we've got solenoid 1, 2, 3, 4, so it works for other vehicles, and in this case you've obviously only got solenoid 1 and 2, so 3 and 4 you're not going to be worried about, and you're not actually going to connect those up. Okay, everything else you're going to connect, so disconnect. So again, you can obviously depin the ECU, and again, really simple and straightforward with depinning these. So you've got your plug here, just as an example. I'm going to use this one because you can clearly see what I'm talking about. So if you take a look here, you'll see these sort of teardrop or water drop shapes. They indicate where you can put a small screwdriver in and you can pop them up. So you see they go up about 1 millimeter. And then if you look closely inside the plug, I don't know if you can see in that top cavity there, but there is actually a lock, like a secondary lock. So you need to put again, a very small pick or screwdriver into there. You're going to lift that up and the pin will come straight out. Now the trick is, as you can imagine, if this lock is what's holding the terminal in, and you're sitting here and you're pulling the wire while you're trying to lift that lock up, you're going to be fighting against yourself. So the trick that I always use is to take the wire in your hand, push it in as far as you can, get your screwdriver in, lift up that secondary lock, and then pull the wire out. Now, they do come out like a hot knife through butter. So if you've got everything right, it should just straight up come out. So if you want to, rather than cutting the wires and having everything sort of just hanging around, you can actually sort of depin everything. As an optional extra, if you buy through us, obviously we can terminate all the wires for you. So you can do it there. We'll obviously leave sort of, you know, the plus B and the E1 and the crank signal, the ones you need to splice in, but we can terminate it if required. And obviously those then, if you're willing to depin, you can obviously just put them straight into the ECU itself and leave the original wires alone if for whatever reason you wanted to return it back to normal again. Okay, so the instructions that are listed down here are basically as follows. So you need to cut the STP wire, which is this one over here. Okay, and that's obviously the brake light switch. So you don't want the brake light 12 brake switch to come through after the device is installed. Okay, I've written down here, please note you must cut all wires apart from 2L. And basically the reason I've done that is because we've seen differences between whether you connect 2 or whether you connect L. So if you're going to obviously have the device terminated and you're going to put the wires in, it'll be a simple case of taking the L1 out, taking out a 2 and putting into L. See which one works better for you. And I've also written down here, please note that you will not use all the wires of the ATEMU, because as you go through the pinout, you'll see that you only have S1 and S2, not S3 and S4, as I went through earlier, and you don't have park pins. So of the yellow wires, you should have one that connects to 2 and one that connects to park. So again, you're not going to be using park. So again, just that'll give out a 12 volts at low RPM. So just make sure it is protected and not just dangling around where it can short out. Okay, and then obviously we've got the other little notes down here. So again, these sort of generic notes. So obviously just make sure that your wires are cut and so on. And one thing I haven't mentioned before is the device has to go actually into the ECU. It sounds silly, I know, but I've had customers where they connect the ATEMU device to the wires actually go into the gearbox and then not actually to the ECU. So just to get that out of the way. And obviously we've given you all the pins to connect to, but you do need to bear in mind that this is utilizing a crank sensor signal. So you need to connect it to E1, because if you don't, you can actually have the sort of ground loops and cause you sort of major issues from there. All right, and the rest of the notes, again, are pretty generic notes. It's just in relation to know that you don't have a park pin, but obviously once your RPM gets above 800 pounds, you should see 12 volts on the 2 pin, which you are actually going to install, and you'll see I've got them labeled here, LN2. All right. So in terms of the, well, we don't use the resistors on these at all, simply because they do not bring a check engine light in any sort of circumstance. So again, a completely unnecessary attribute. So I haven't included them in the notes here. So again, it'll obviously say things like if you want to remove these codes, etc., add the resistors. So just ignore those if you've got it there. And then going through the actual device itself. So if you look on the back, here's your little LED, so it'll light up, usually green. Then you've got a button in there. And so what it'll basically do is, with the ignition on, not the engine running, with the ignition on, you can cycle through the mode. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's like Morse code. So when it's in mode 1, it'll flash once, pause, once, pause, once, pause. And when it's in 2, flash, flash, pause, flash, flash, pause. So you know exactly which mode it's in. All right. So basically there's 5 different modes, because again, this is used on a multitude of vehicles. And it's basically the programming for the relation between the NCO, which is the input speed, and obviously this is taking an RPM signal and it's putting out a signal to the NCO and the SP2 based on the RPM signal. So going through the different modes changes the relationship between those particular 2 elements. So again, we've noticed differences. People have noticed differences between different modes in different vehicles. So we've just put them all together to make them available and to make it easier, so we have one device that works on multiple vehicles. All right, so hopefully that's been helpful. What we will do is obviously we'll make these videos as and when people are purchasing these from now on, just to sort of give something to you guys when you come in to install it. I know sometimes paperwork, no matter how comprehensive we try to make it, sometimes it's just easier to have a video where somebody can explain it to you. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys again soon. Thank you very much. Bye.